Imagine dedicating like 12 years of your life to building a utopian society. And I don't just mean, reading about it online or going to a weekend retreat.
Right, right. Not just a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. Picture physically moving across tens of thousands of kilometers, building homes entirely from scratch, losing those homes to forces outside your control, and surviving purely on this absolute unshakable belief that you and your small group of peers are constructing the only Noah's Ark of our modern era.
It is a massive level of commitment.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the blueprint for this modern-day Noah's Ark is this dense, just deeply fascinating manifesto from 2021. It was written by a figure named Xuefeng, and the document itself is titled Celebrating the 12th Anniversary of Xuefeng-Style Communism.
Yeah, and I mean, that title alone really signals that we're dealing with a profound blending of concepts here.
Oh, for sure.
You've got this deeply entrenched political and economic framework slapped right next to the name of a singular leader, which, hints at a highly personalized ideological universe from the get-go.
Completely. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this highly specific kind of fringe document to understand the worldview of the people who actually follow it. They call themselves the Lifechanyuan Celestials.
Right, the Lifechanyuan Celestial.
And they operate at this wild intersection of traditional communist ideology and a sprawling cosmic naturalistic philosophy. But before we explore the mechanics of how this group functions, there is a very crucial baseline we need to establish with you, our listener.
Yeah, this is super important to state up front.
Definitely. We want to be crystal clear with you. We are not endorsing or validating or taking sides on any of these political or historical viewpoints. Our job today is purely impartial. We're here just to report on the content of this document and convey the original ideas exactly as they are written, just so you can understand this group's unique perspective.
Exactly. We're operating strictly as translators of this text today. And to understand why the Lifechanyuan Celestials believe they are quite literally the saviors of humanity, you first have to look at the physical toll it has taken to construct their movement. It's intense.
It is. This isn't just an armchair philosophy. It's a belief system forged through, constant, relentless displacement.
Yeah, the physical journey detailed in the text begins on April 18th, 2009.
In Taiyuan City, right.
Right, Taiyuan City in Shaanxi Province. And from that launch point, the group essentially became a nomadic entity. Over the next 12 years, they built 18 different homes. And just looking at the geography of it, the logistics alone are staggering.
Just massive.
They didn't just move, to the next town over. They established communities in Kunming and then all the way out in Xinjiang.
Wow.
Yeah, specifically in Aksu and Korla, which, that means dealing with incredibly harsh desert environments. And then they even expanded internationally into Canada and Thailand.
And see, that geographical spread is just highly unusual for an insular utopian group.
Because usually they stay put, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Usually a movement like this finds an isolated compound somewhere and just barricades itself in. But by constantly moving and sometimes crossing international borders, they are subjected to wildly different legal systems, cultural norms, economic realities.
Yeah, but
moving a whole collective of people requires a massive amount of shared resources and coordination, and frankly, psychological buy-in. Every single time they're uprooted, they have to completely rebuild their internal infrastructure.
I just kept thinking about the sheer friction of that existence while I was reading this.
Yeah.
It's like a traveling organism that is forced to completely dissolve and rebuild its cellular structure every 8 or 9 months.
That's a really good way to put it.
Or like a relentlessly unlucky but fiercely dedicated startup.
Right.
But despite all this chaos, Xuefeng makes this astounding claim. He states that for those 12 years, across all those borders and provinces, the Lifechanyuan Celestials maintained a flawless record.
A completely spotless record.
Yes. They claim 0 crimes committed by any member and absolutely no harm done to human society or to nature.
And you have to understand, claiming a spotless moral and legal record while operating in a state of perpetual crisis, it serves a very specific function in their narrative.
Oh, how so?
Well, they are establishing an impenetrable moral high ground. By stating they have never harmed society or nature, they are implicitly arguing that any hardship they face is entirely the fault of a corrupt outside world.
Oh, I see. It pushes all the blame outward.
Exactly. It creates this stark binary. You have the pure, blameless celestials on the inside, and then the hostile, tainted world on the outside.
And the text certainly paints the outside world as overwhelmingly hostile. The imagery Xuefeng uses is vivid and Honestly, pretty brutal.
Very much so.
He describes his followers being forced out of picturesque homes built with blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
He writes about them facing wolves, tigers, and leopards and, navigating turbulent rivers and standing on the edge of cliffs.
Yeah, it reads almost like an ancient epic.
It does. He claims his people are willing to eat stale bread with impure water, wear literal rags, and endure dripping blood, all while continuing forward in what he calls a natural and unrestrained way.
Notice how the suffering is completely romanticized there.
Yeah, it really is.
Because in group psychology, especially within high-demand or utopian organizations, shared trauma is the ultimate binding agent.
Right.
The persecution they face, which Xuefeng describes as barbarism shrouding the clear sky like sandstorms, it gets repurposed.
Yeah.
I mean, from an outside perspective, getting evicted 18 times might suggest a fundamental flaw in how the group interacts with the world, right?
Yeah, you'd think maybe they're doing something wrong.
Right. But internally, that friction is reframed as a crucible.
It proves their purity. Like, the harder the world pushes back, the more evidence they have that they are actually on the right path.
Precisely. Surviving the sandstorm of barbarism proves their commitment to what the text calls the qualities of truth, kindness, beauty, love, honesty, and peace. The suffering isn't a glitch in their system. To them, it is the necessary fire that burns away their earthly attachments and solidifies their identity as celestials.
Which brings us to the core motivation behind all of this wandering. Like, why endure a life of stale bread and constant eviction? Well, because the Chanyuan Celestials believe the entirety of modern society and nearly all of recorded history is fundamentally broken.
Yes.
They don't just critique the world, they completely invalidate it.
They really do. The author's view of history is aggressively scorched earth, and it begins with this massive condemnation of his own cultural heritage.
Yeah, that part stood out to me.
The text asserts that for 2,000 years, the Chinese nation has made almost no ideological or scientific contributions to human civilization.
2,000 years. And he traces this total civilizational failure back to a very specific moment, right? The reign of the Qin dynasty's first emperor.
Yes, Qin Shi Huang.
Right. And this is the emperor famously known for burning books and burying scholars alive to suppress dissent. Xuefeng points to that exact historical event as the moment China's backbone was basically snapped. He argues that the legacy of that suppression left nothing but a cycle of tyrants and submissive slaves.
And highlighting the Qing dynasty is a deliberate, highly effective rhetorical strategy here.
Why is that?
Because in many historical narratives, Qin Shi Huang is actually credited with unifying China, standardizing writing, and building the foundation of the empire.
Oh, right. He's usually seen as this foundational figure.
Exactly. So by attacking that specific figure and framing the unification not as a triumph, but as the literal death of intellectual freedom, Xuefeng is effectively pulling the rug out from under 2 millennia of cultural identity.
That is bold.
It is. He's telling his followers that the history they were taught is actually just a record of their enslavement.
And he applies that exact same level of contempt to modern society, too.
Yeah.
Like, he compares the contemporary world to a beggar wearing fresh new clothing, basically meaning that despite technological advancements or economic growth, the core of humanity is still just impoverished and pathetic.
Yeah, the clothing looks nice, but underneath it's still a beggar.
Right.
Yeah.
And he uses this fantastic literary reference to drive this home. He mocks people for having an AQ style of national pride.
That reference is so crucial for understanding the real depth of his disdain.
Definitely. For you listening who might not be familiar with early 20th century Chinese literature, AQ is the protagonist of a really famous novella by Lu Sun. And AQ is this impoverished, uneducated man who constantly gets beaten up, humiliated, just taken advantage of by everyone.
Right.
But instead of facing reality, AQ possesses this profound capacity for self-deception. Every single time he loses a fight, he convinces himself that he's actually the spiritual victor.
It's all mental gymnastics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If someone slaps him, he tells himself he is superior because he generously allowed them to do it. So by calling modern national pride AQ style, Xuefeng is basically saying that the entire global population is living in a state of pathetic delusion.
Yeah.
We're convincing ourselves we are winning while we are actually just living in the gutter.
And he doesn't limit this diagnosis to the East either. The manifesto explicitly declares that Western capitalism has reached a total dead end.
Right. He trashes capitalism too.
Yep. And he dismisses traditional socialism as a failed experiment that is merely prolonging its last gasp.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I found myself naturally pushing back against the sheer scale of this pessimism.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It's a massive, sweeping claim to say a 2,000-year-old civilization has absolutely no backbone, and then in the same breath, throw the entirety of Western capitalism and existing socialism into the trash. How do they justify completely rejecting every existing system on Earth? It feels almost overwhelmingly arrogant to look at the entire spectrum of human achievement and say, none of this works, tear it all down.
Well, it does require an immense amount of audacity, but it's actually a structural necessity for the type of society Xuefeng is trying to build.
Really, a necessity.
Yes, think about it. You cannot convince people to abandon their families, their careers, and their societal norms to go live in the desert unless you convince them that the society they're leaving is totally unsalvageable.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Think about how a contractor might assess a damaged foundation. If the contractor says, hey, you have a few cracks, we can patch them, well, you just fix the house.
Right.
But if the contractor says the concrete is toxic, the wood is rotten, and the ground beneath it is sinking, your only logical choice is to demolish it and let that contractor build you a brand new house.
Oh, wow. So he's actively destroying the market for patches. He even calls the work of all existing philosophers and sociologists mere self-sentimental groans. He's creating this total ideological vacuum, which he, of course, is conveniently ready to fill with his own solution.
Nature abhors a vacuum, right, and utopian leaders really rely on them. Once he has dismantled capitalism, socialism, and historical tradition, he introduces the only remaining alternative.
Right, Xuefeng-style communism.
That's the one.
But, and here's where it gets really interesting for you listening, the text immediately clarifies that this has almost nothing in common with the communism you'd read about in history textbooks.
Not at all.
They use this highly political term, communism, but they call themselves Chanyuan celestials. And they explicitly state that to practice this new form of communism, you have to understand the Tao. It's like they've taken a political economic structure and merged it with a cosmic naturalistic religion.
And this is exactly where their philosophy separates from traditional political theory. I mean, traditional communism relies on human structures, right? A vanguard party, state apparatuses, centralized planning, all to enforce equality and manage resources.
Yeah, lots of bureaucracy.
Right. But Xuefeng argues that these traditional forms failed precisely because they were human-made doctrines. They were artificial. To him, true communism cannot be enforced by a government. It has to be an organic extension of the universe's natural laws.
He writes that you must understand the space and time of the universe and the truth of life to make this work. It's such a fascinating mechanism. Instead of a new set of laws, it's almost like he's proposing a total operating system update for human consciousness.
Yes.
He's basically arguing that if you just align your daily behavior with the literal rotation of the galaxies and the flow of the Tao, the socioeconomic problems just solve themselves.
Because in his view, the Tao, the fundamental underlying flow of the universe, is inherently balanced and harmonious.
So no one would even want to hoard wealth.
Exactly. If a community is truly attuned to the Tao, greed and exploitation just become physically impossible.
And that explains the incredibly poetic metrics he uses to measure the success of his utopia. He doesn't talk about GDP or production quotas or poverty lines.
Not at all.
He measures success by a state of peace. He envisions this era where doors will not be bolted at night and where no one will pocket anything found on the ground. In this society, the talented are organically put to good use so that everyone can live happily.
It's a very idyllic picture.
It is. It's this vision where morality isn't policed by cops or courts. It's just an accepted law of physics like gravity. You don't steal a watch you find on the ground for the same reason you don't step off a tall cliff. It just goes against the natural order.
And by framing his society as an extension of that natural order, Xuefeng positions Xuefeng-style communism as the ultimate, inevitable beacon for humanity. The text claims it will surpass all Western values and become the guiding light for the progress of humankind.
The only way forward.
Right. If human-made laws are inherently flawed and blind, then aligning with the immutable laws of nature is the only way to avoid destruction.
And destruction is heavily emphasized in this document. Xuefeng writes that if you don't understand the laws of nature, you are blind, and you will be led straight into a fire pit.
Yeah, that imagery shifts things dramatically.
It really does. That fire pit imagery signals a massive tonal shift in the manifesto. We move from these serene visions of unbolted doors and celestial harmony into this state of severe apocalyptic urgency.
Well, utopian visions often rely on the promise of a better future, but to motivate immediate action, they require a ticking clock.
Ah, the urgency.
Right. The manifesto introduces this clock by declaring that a global catastrophe is currently unfolding.
The text warns of a great adjustment of life in the universe. That's life in all caps.
Hmm.
It describes this plot that is becoming sudden and violent, driven by forces that absolutely no human power can resist.
It's very dramatic.
Extremely. And the author points to the global pandemic as tangible, undeniable proof of this cosmic event. He writes about the plague god descending on the earth, forcing everyone, even the most powerful presidents, to obediently put on masks.
It is a brilliant, albeit manipulative, use of contemporary anxiety. I mean, the pandemic was a deeply disorienting, terrifying global event that disrupted daily life on a massive scale. People naturally look for meaning in chaos.
Yeah, I kept thinking about how perfectly this fits the psychological mechanism of a Rorschach test.
Oh, how so?
Well, a virologist looks at the pandemic and sees airborne pathogens, transmission rates, spike proteins. But Xuefeng looks at the exact same data, presidents wearing masks, global lockdowns, and he sees an intentional, universe-mandated spanking of humanity.
A spanking, yeah. That's a good word for it.
He retrofits the chaos of reality to fit his predetermined narrative. So what does this all mean? They're taking a global health crisis and framing it as an intentional cosmic adjustment designed to put arrogant, Q-style humans back in their place.
And reframing a public health crisis as a cosmic judgment serves the ultimate purpose of the manifesto. It brands the Chanyuan Celestials as the only Noah's Ark of our era.
There's that phrase again.
Yes, this ark metaphor is the engine of the entire text, and it performs two critical functions simultaneously.
Okay, what are they?
Well, it validates the past while weaponizing the future.
Right, I see that.
First, if a literal cosmic flood is currently washing over the Earth, then wandering across provinces, getting evicted 18 times, and living on stale bread wasn't a series of unfortunate failures.
It was training.
It was the grueling labor required to build a seaworthy vessel. The hardship is justified because the boat is real. And second, the presence of the floodwaters creates intense, immediate pressure for anyone reading the manifesto.
It really is a high-pressure sales tactic applied to human salvation. The text literally says, may people sublimate into Xuefeng-style communism as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because the adjustment is sudden and violent.
Right. Get on the boat now.
Exactly. If you cling to your old patch clothes of modern society, if you cling to Western capitalism or the broken history of the Qin dynasty, you're going down with the ship.
The rhetorical structure is incredibly tight when you break it down.
It really is.
First, dismantle the reader's trust in all external institutions in history. Second, offer a serene, cosmic alternative that promises total security and moral clarity. Third, tell the reader they have mere moments to step onto the ark before the universe cleanses itself of the unworthy.
Wow. It is a heavy, intense ideology to process. So let's take a moment to look at the full scope of what we've explored with you today. We have traced the 12-year journey of the Chanyuan Celestials. This is a group that has moved across deserts and international borders to build 18 different homes.
Yep.
We explored how their survival against constant displacement bonded them, leading to a total rejection of thousands of years of human history, capitalism, and traditional statecraft. And in place of all that, they've engineered this belief system that merges the communal sharing of communism with the fundamental physical laws of the universe.
It's quite the synthesis.
It is. And they are holding their ground, maintaining a strict moral purity, because they truly believe the pandemic and global chaos are signs of a sudden, violent cosmic adjustment, making them the only surviving lifeboat.
It is a worldview balanced on a knife's edge. I mean, they cultivate absolute internal peace and unbolted doors, while simultaneously anticipating and, quite frankly, relying on the absolute external destruction of the rest of humanity.
Yeah, it's the ultimate us versus them dynamic, elevated to a cosmic scale.
It is. Which brings up a very specific line from the manifesto that I think deserves close examination before we wrap up.
Oh, which one?
Well, while declaring their purity, Xuefeng states that the group will not beg anyone for help or compromise their dignity to gain acceptance from society. And the rationale he gives is striking. He writes, "We cannot gamble on the chance that people might have consciences."
Oh, wow. We cannot gamble on the chance that people might have consciences. It implies a complete loss of faith in the individual humanity of anyone outside their group.
It is a profoundly isolating philosophy. If you build a society on the foundational belief that the outside world is entirely devoid of conscience, You really have to wonder about the long-term trajectory of that group.
Definitely.
If this isolated Noah's Ark truly believes the rest of us are inherently blind and doomed by the cosmic adjustment, what happens when they decide the floodwaters have peaked?
That's a scary thought.
Will their internal dedication to peace, beauty, and unbolted doors sustain them? Or does viewing the entirety of humanity as an unsalvageable enemy inevitably lead the Ark to pull up its drawbridge, sever all ties with reality, and just let the outside world drown? You have to ask yourself, how much darker does their worldview get in year 13?
That is a chilling question to ponder. Thank you so much for exploring this with us, and to you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the information around you, and we'll catch you next time.